In the cold halls of the Zaranthian palace, Queen Virellia sat high on her throne, 8 feet tall and dressed in shining battle armor. She looked down at her court like a goddess of war. Her skin glowed a deep copper orange, her eyes golden. And sharp like blades, she ruled her star empire with fear and strength, and she liked it that way. When a message came from Earth, asking for peace talks, the queen only laughed. "Humans?" she said, leaning back. "What could they offer except weakness? Are they trying to impress me with words and peace treaties? How soft, how boring." Her generals chuckled. Nodding in agreement, one of them added, "They want to send a male ambassador, a scientist named Alex Rains." "A scientist?" Virellia smirked. "Not even a warrior? What are they thinking? He'll collapse the moment he breathes our air." The court laughed again. The queen waved her hand. "Let him come. I enjoy comedy." Soon, the human ship landed on Zarinthia. The guards stood ready, curious to see this small Earthman. And there he was walking calmly down the ramp, dressed in a simple black suit with small machines and glowing lights. He looked around, unafraid, when Alex Rains entered the queen's court. He did not bow. Instead, he stood tall and said clearly, "Queen Virellia, I thank you for your invitation." Virelia's eyes narrowed. "You are braver than you look." "Human," she said, her voice cold, "or maybe just foolish." "Been called both," Alex replied. "Usually by people taller than me." The court gasped. No one had ever spoken to the queen like that. Virelia's lip curled in amusement. "You joke. Do you think this is a game?" she asked. "No," Alex said. "But if I make you smile, it might help me stay alive." And just like that, for the first time in years, Queen Virellia smiled. But she didn't let anyone see how surprised she was. She stood and walked slowly down the steps of her throne, towering over the human. "You come from a fragile world," she said, circling him. "What makes you think your species has anything to offer mine?" Alex reached into a small bag and pulled out a round object. He placed it on the floor. It glowed softly, floating in the air. "This is a Terra seed," he explained. "It can grow food on dead planets. It uses Zarinthian biotech mixed with human software." The queen tilted her head. "Who gave you access to our tech?" "I studied your public science archives and improved them," Alex replied. "With respect, of course. You improved my scientist's work?" she asked sharply. "I improved life," he answered. The court was silent. Virellia stared at him, then turned to her guards. "Place him in the moonlight quarters," she said, "under guard, but with freedom to move. I want to see what else he thinks he can improve." Later that night, the queen stood in her private garden, surrounded by glowing trees and floating lights. The cold wind moved her long red hair as she looked up at the stars. But her thoughts were not on war or politics. They were on the human. He didn't flinch when she spoke. He didn't fear her power. He looked at her, not like a queen, but like someone worth understanding. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Why are you not afraid of me?" Across the palace, in his chamber, Alex was reading Zaranthian texts, learning their language faster than anyone expected. A guard watched him through the doorway, confused. "He studies all night," the guard muttered, "and talks to plants. Like they understand him." The queen heard this report the next morning and smirked. "Bring him to the crystal chamber. I want to test his mind." That day, she gave Alex puzzles created by her best scholars, riddles meant to trick even the brightest aliens. But Alex solved them all, with jokes and stories in between. "You enjoy games?" she asked him. "No," he replied. "I enjoy learning how people play them." Virellia said nothing, but her heart beat a little faster. After he left, one of her generals stepped close. "You should be careful, my queen. He is not like the others." "I know," she whispered, watching the door. "That's why I haven't destroyed him." But deep inside, she wasn't thinking about destroying him anymore. She was thinking about why she dreamed of him that night, and why, for the first time in her long, powerful life, her heart refused to stay cold. The palace guards had names for him now. Soft One, the speaker, the human who didn't kneel. But Queen Virellia called him by only one name, Rains Come. The human didn't flinch when she summoned him. He walked through the palace like he belonged there, past towering alien statues and royal warriors who could crush his bones without effort. Still, he smiled calm, like this wasn't the deadliest place he'd ever stood. That annoyed her and fascinated her. Virellia sat in her private chamber, not the throne room. The space was quieter, more personal. The walls glowed with soft energy, and starlight poured in from a window made of crystal vines. No one was ever invited here, except him. "You said you enjoy learning," she said as he entered. "Let's see if you enjoy failing." She tossed a puzzle onto the table, a shifting cube that no outsider had ever solved, not even top scientists from the allied worlds. It rotated with thought energy and changed shape every time you got close to the answer. Alex picked it up and laughed. "Looks like a Rubik's Cube had an argument with a black hole." She narrowed her eyes. "Solve it. Do I get a prize if I win?" "You get to leave with your legs unbroken," she replied coldly. He sat down without fear and turned the cube in his hands. His fingers moved fast. Too fast. The queen watched, silent, amused, and curious. Within 4 minutes, it locked into a perfect glowing form. The queen leaned forward, stunned. "You've done this before." "Nope," Alex smiled. "Just listen to it. Your cube sings when it's close to the answer. The rest was rhythm." She blinked, then covered her surprise with a shrug. "Maybe you're not useless after all." Alex looked around the room. "This isn't the place where you test random toys. Why am I really here?" Virellia stood and walked to a tall window. Snow falling outside onto the floating royal gardens. "Because I don't trust myself around you." He stayed silent, letting her continue. "I've ruled for over 200 years, she said. I've fought wars that destroyed planets. I've crushed rebellions. But you speak like none of it matters, like you're not afraid of who I am." "I know who you are," Alex said softly. "I just don't think fear is the only way to see someone." She turned, her face unreadable. "So how do you see me?" "As a woman who's been alone for too long," he said. Even with a full empire under her feet. That silence was louder than any battle horn. Her eyes flickered with something rare uncertainty. That night, the queen couldn't sleep, her mind replay his words again and again, not afraid, not impressed, just honest. She walked to her private mirror and stared at herself, not as a queen, not as a warrior, just as a being, and wondered why him. Meanwhile, across the palace, Alex stood in the middle of the garden, looking up at the stars above Zarinthia. A soft orange moon glowed in the sky, unlike anything on Earth. A guard watched him from a distance and muttered, "He doesn't act like prey." "He isn't," said a soft voice from behind. It was Virellia. She had walked silently, no crown, no guards, only a thin robe over her armor. The air shimmered around her body from the natural energy she gave off, like heat from a dying sun. "I can't sleep," she said, standing beside him. "Maybe because you're still thinking about the cube," he said with a small smile. "No," she whispered, "because I'm thinking about you." He looked at her but didn't say anything, letting her control the moment. "I've seen 1,000 warriors beg for my attention," she said. "They gave gifts, power, even armies. You gave me music and silence." Alex nodded. "Maybe silence is all you ever needed." She turned to face him fully now, standing so close he could feel the heat from her body. "Do you desire me?" she asked, not shy, not gentle, just direct. Alex didn't back away. "That's not the question. The question is, do you want someone who doesn't worship you?" Her eyes narrowed, then softened. "I don't know," she whispered. "But I know I'm not sending you away." In the shadows of the garden, unseen by both, a royal spy recorded every word, transmitting it back to General Drax and the Council of Bloodlines. Their worst fear was now confirmed. The queen was no longer curious about the human. She was interested, and that made him dangerous. The palace ballroom glowed with gold and starlight. The air buzzed with excitement, and every noble, general, and council member stood waiting for the Queen's entrance. It was the festival of ascension, a celebration of power, heritage, and strength. But tonight, all eyes weren't on the Queen, they were on the human. Alex Rain stood quietly near a crystal statue, wearing formal clothes designed for Zaranthian air. His translator rested on his collar, but he hardly needed it anymore. He had learned most of their language by ear. His presence was no longer strange, it was dangerous. He had survived weeks inside the Queen's court without fear. And somehow, the Queen still hadn't sent him home. Queen Virellia entered, taller than everyone, her armor replaced with flowing ceremonial robes that moved. Like liquid fire, the room fell silent. She saw him immediately, but tonight, she didn't nod or glance or smirk tonight. She walked to the center of the room and raised her voice. "Tonight is a night of tradition," she said. "But I have grown tired of tradition." A murmur ran through the crowd. She turned to face Alex and spoke clearly. "You human Rains, stand here as the only outsider in our sacred space. Many ask why I allow it." Alex blinked, confused. "So let me make it clear," she continued. "I allow it because I choose it." More whispers, louder now. Then she raised her chin. "But choice must be tested." She pointed to a circular platform in the center of the hall. "If you can show me something no warrior, no scholar, no royal has ever given me, then I will grant you what no human has received, a queen's favor." Gasps exploded in every corner. A queen's favor was more than romance, it was invitation. Recognition, a bond sealed in history. Alex looked around, heart racing. "And if I fail?" The Queen's smile was sharp. "Then you'll leave this palace and never return." The crowd leaned in, waiting. Alex walked slowly to the platform, empty-handed, no gift, no tech, just himself. "I don't have weapons," he said. "I don't have treasures or tales of battle." He placed a small device on the ground. It hummed softly. Then a light rose into the air, forming images, sound, and memory. "I only have one thing," Alex said. "My truth." The hologram played a video earth. Broken cities healing after war. People building homes from rubble. A child helping a stranger walk through fire. A mother sacrificing food for her sick son. Lovers crying and laughing under falling rain. The ballroom was silent, eyes locked on the projection. Then came the sound-soft music, an old earth song. No words, just a piano, aching and warm. "I come from a planet where we are small," Alex said. "But every time we fall, we rise. We are not perfect. We're not strong like you, but we are resilient. We survive by feeling." He looked directly at the Queen. "And I see the same in you, Virellia, not just power, but pain, not just fire, but loneliness." She didn't blink. He stepped off the platform. "I have nothing to offer but this, my understanding, and myself." Silence, then a single sound clap. One noble, then another, and then silence again as the Queen raised her hand. She walked toward Alex slowly, then stopped inches from him, towering like a mountain of fire and strength. "You risked public shame," she said, voice low, "for a chance to show me something real." He nodded. "You succeeded." And then she did the unthinkable. She placed her palm on his chest, just over his heart. It was a gesture reserved for mates. The entire court gasped. Some stepped back in horror, some in awe, others in fury. General Drax's face turned stone cold. "She's lost her mind," he muttered. "She just made him more than a guest." The Queen ignored them all. Her eyes never left Alex's. Her voice dropped to a whisper only he could hear. "You made my heart stutter, Rains," she said. "And that terrifies me." Alex smiled gently. "Then I've done something no one else could." From that moment on, nothing would be the same. Not for her, not for him, not for the Empirening. She stared out from her tower, overlooking the glowing rivers of her capital. Her thoughts were quiet, but not empty. She was remembering the way his heart beat beneath her hand. It had matched hers. Not in strength, but in rhythm. She had felt something. Later that day, she called for Alex, not to the gardens, not to the science hall, but to the sanctum of origins, a sacred place where only blood royalty were allowed. The chamber glowed with ancient energy and golden vines that pulsed with life. Alex stepped inside, blinking. Is this where you were born? No, Virellia said quietly. This is where I was chosen, where my people tested my core, my energy, my mind. This place crowned me queen. And now you bring me here? He asked, confused. She turned to him, her face softer than ever. Because I need answers. And I think my body already has one. She placed his hand over her energy core, just for a moment. It flickered, first blue, then red, then both. Alex pulled back, shocked. What is that? I don't know, she said, voice trembling. But I haven't been the same since I touched you. Across the palace the whispers grew louder. Some nobles secretly pledged loyalty to General Drax, calling for a vote to challenge the queen. A trial of fitness, a test of loyalty to the bloodline. It hadn't been done in centuries, but now the people were restless. She's changing, one advisor muttered. She doesn't talk like a ruler anymore. No, another snapped. She talks like a woman, and that's dangerous even. The palace healers had started noticing strange shifts. Queen Virellia's energy readings had begun to fluctuate. Stronger some days, weaker others. But they dared not ask what was happening inside her, because they feared the answer. Back in the sanctum, Virellia paced slowly, her robe trailing behind her like a dark flame. If I bond with you, she said, I will not just lose favor, I may lose the throne. Alex looked at her, calm but honest. Then don't do it for me. Do it because you believe in what this is. She stepped closer. Do you even understand what you are to me, human? You're not a partner, you're a risk. Maybe, Alex replied. But maybe I'm also your way out of a life that no longer feels like living. That silence again, the one that said more than words ever could. In the shadows, an invisible figure watched them, cloaked in stealth tech, recording every second. The footage was instantly sent to General Drax, who watched it with narrowed eyes. She's already chosen him, he said. But she doesn't know what she carries. What do you mean? A younger commander asked. Drax smirked darkly. I've seen the readings from her core. She's not just falling for the human, she's changing. We may not need to destroy her own body, we'll do that for us. But Drax didn't know what. The queen had already started to feel in her bones. The shift wasn't killing her. It was giving her something new, something alive, something that would shake the empire to its core. It was past midnight, and the palace no longer slept. The storm over Zarinthia's capital had rolled in without warning. Sky cracked with electric clouds, wind howled through crystal towers. It was the kind of storm used in old myths to announce the fall of empires. But tonight, the storm wasn't outside, it was inside the queen. Queen Virellia stood alone in her inner sanctum, hand pressed flat against the crystal wall. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper, something unfamiliar. Her energy core had started pulsing again, but not in anger, it pulsed with life. She turned to her personal healer, who stood at a respectful distance. Face pale, tools shaking in her hands. Speak, Virellia commanded. You've run the tests twice. Yes, my queen, the healer whispered. 3 times actually, the results are unchanged. Say it, the queen said, her voice sharper now. You are with child, the healer whispered. The readings show human DNA, fused with your own. The queen staggered a step back, hand to her stomach. Her breath caught in her throat. She was a warrior queen, born for battle, not motherhood. And now this? This is impossible, she said, eyes wide. Our species can't bond biologically. Until now, the healer replied. You've formed a living hybrid outside the chamber. A shadow moved fast. Someone had been listening, and they ran straight to General Drax, inside his war chamber. Drax's face turned to stone as he heard the news. She's not just choosing the human, he growled. She's breeding with him. Orders? A soldier asked. Prepare for the emergency council. Drax snapped. If we do not act, the next ruler of Zarinthia will be half Earthborn. Meanwhile, Alex sat alone in the lunar garden, unaware of the chaos building inside the palace walls. He looked up at the twin moons, breathing slowly, trying to understand the quiet between each heartbeat. That's when she came. Virellia entered like a thunderstorm, no armor, no robe. Just her tall form wrapped in black silk that shimmered like shadows. Her eyes were wild, not angry but lost. "You need to listen," she said sharply. Alex stood, his voice gentle. "I am listening." She stepped forward, her chest rising and falling with every breath. "I'm pregnant, Alex." Silence. "I didn't plan it. I didn't expect it. But your presence changed something in me. In my body, we created something no science said was possible." Alex blinked slowly, then whispered, "A child?" She nodded. "Ours." He stepped closer, placing a hand over hers, which rested protectively on her stomach. "Then we've created more than just peace. We've created history." She looked up into his eyes, and for the first time in her long, powerful life, she let the walls fall. "Just a little. I don't know how to protect it," she whispered. "Not in this world, not in this court. You don't have to." He said, "Not alone." He reached for her, slow and careful. Not as a subject reaching for a queen, but as a man reaching for the woman he trusted, loved, and now shared a future with. Their hands touched skin to skin. The queen's body flared with energy, but instead of defense, it welcomed his warmth. Her pulse matched his, her mind opened, and in that moment, they formed something deeper than a bond. They became one. But outside, the storm had grown too loud to ignore. The council had gathered. General Drax stood before them, voice like stone. "She carries a half-blood, a child that could infect our throne. We must stop this now." "What of the people?" someone asked. "Will they accept this betrayal?" "Not if we frame it as corruption," Drax answered. "We say the human has poisoned her, used his earth tricks to cloud her mind. They'll believe it. They want to believe it." And with that, the vote was cast. The queen was to face trial. She would have to choose her crown or her child. Back in the sanctum, Virellia and Alex stood in the quiet, their hands still joined. She felt something inside her shift again, not just the energy of life growing, but resolve. "They're coming." "For me," she said softly. "For us." Alex didn't flinch. "Then we don't run," he said. "We stand, and let the galaxy see what they fear most, not weakness." He looked at her, smiling faintly. The sun rose red over the Zaranthian capital, not from weather or light distortion, but from something else. The red banners had been raised, a signal to the Empire. A queen was being questioned, inside the grand hall of judgment. The nobles gathered in silence, their eyes cold, their minds already made up. At the center stood General Drax, wearing ceremonial black, his hand resting on a sword that hadn't left its sheath in over 50 years. "She is no longer just our queen," he growled to the council. "She is the host of an anomaly, one that could poison our royal bloodline forever." A high elder leaned forward. "And the child?" "Hybrid," Drax spat. "Part human, part Zaranthian, and fully unfit." But far above the courtroom, in a chamber sealed by command, Queen Virellia stood before a mirror made of living crystal. Her hands trembled slightly over her stomach, where her energy core glowed dimly, not just blue anymore, but mixed with something warmer, something alive. She no longer needed tests. No healers, no confirmation. She could feel it now, every heartbeat, every flutter of change. It wasn't just a child, it was a shift in destiny. Alex Rain stood behind her, quiet but steady. "They want me to surrender the child," she whispered. "They want me to confess I've been corrupted. And are you?" Alex asked softly. She turned to face him, her eyes fierce but unsure. "I've never been more clear." He nodded, stepping forward, gently placing his hand where her own had just been. "Then tell them that." Outside, the whispers had turned into roars. "She's not answering the summons. Maybe she's hiding her weakness." Or maybe she's preparing to make a mistake the galaxy won't forget. Inside the council chamber, the crystal floor began to glow. The queen had arrived. She entered in silence, wearing no crown, no war armor, only a flowing robe of deep violet lined with silver veins of energy. Her bare feet echoed on the stone like thunder wrapped in silk. The court fell silent. She did not wait for permission. "You called me here to make a choice," she said, her voice echoing in every corner, "between the child growing inside me and the crown I earned through fire and blood." Elder male, the oldest among them, leaned forward. "This child is a mistake, my queen, a union that was never meant to exist." "I was not meant to exist either," she said without hesitation. "I was born a female in a royal caste that rejected female heirs. I fought my way to the throne with tooth and claw. Was that also a mistake?" The chamber stirred, her words hitting deep. Drax stood, his voice sharp. "You ask us to accept the unthinkable." "No," she said, turning to him. "I ask you to witness it." She extended her hand, and the room dimmed. Her energy core pulsed from her chest in full view. Two lights now, one blue, one red. The child was no longer theory, no longer secret, it was real. Gasps echoed through the room. "This is evolution," she said, voice like steel, "not a threat, not pollution. It is the future of two worlds, and the human?" Drax demanded, "Do you love him too?" She didn't blink. "I love his courage, I love his honesty, and I love that when I gave him every chance to run, he stayed. And if we force you to give it up, then you'll have to pry this life from my dead hands," she said, stepping forward, "because I will not kill a child just to keep a title." That moment cracked the silence open. Some nobles stood to protest. Others whispered to each other, confused, shaken, unsure. Elder male raised a hand to calm the room, then looked at her. "You understand, Your Majesty, if we let you keep this child, everything changes." Queen Virellia looked around the room, then upward, as if through the ceiling, through the sky, through the stars. "That is the point," she whispered. For the first time in Zaranthian history, the queen stood not as a ruler, but as a mother. The council chamber was silent, no longer filled with threats, but with uncertainty. The nobles, the generals, the high-bloods all stared at Queen Virellia, as if they no longer knew her, because they didn't. She was no longer just the queen who had crushed rebellions, conquered star systems, and ruled without mercy. She was now the queen who had chosen a human and carried his child across the room. General Drax rose again, one last time, holding an ancient scroll, the law of royal purity. His voice echoed like fire in stone. "This union breaks the first line. This child, if allowed to live, changes who we are." Queen Virellia stepped forward, her voice calm but unshakable. "That's exactly why it must live," the chamber murmured, louder this time. Some nodded. Others hissed in fear, but no one dared interrupt her now. She turned toward the people watching through the projection walls, citizens across her empire, witnessing every word, every breath. "My people," she said, "for centuries, we've taught that strength means never changing, but I have seen the lie in that belief." She paused, hand gently resting over her womb, where two pulses beat as one. "This child is not a mistake," she said, louder now. "It is proof that we can grow without losing who we are, that love is not weakness, it is evolution." "And the human?" Elder male asked from his seat. "What is he to you really? A tool? A cause? A moment of weakness?" Alex Rains stood up from the edge of the room, no armor, no power, just a man who had come with words and stayed with heart. "I never came to change her," he said. "She changed herself, because there was something broken inside her that no one else dared to see." He walked slowly beside her, never looking away from the council. "I saw a ruler with no rest, a woman with no touch, a queen feared by all but never held. She let me in," he continued. "Not because I was strong, but because I was honest. Because I didn't worship her, I respected her." Virellia looked at him, and for the first time in public, Her hand reached for his, fingers interlocked, and stayed there, the moment shattered. 1,000 years of royal custom. Gasps echoed again, followed by stunned silence. Then, suddenly, an unexpected voice rose. She risked everything, it said. It was Councilwoman Talsra, one of the oldest and most feared voices in the chamber. I've served 5 monarchs, she said, standing slowly, and not one of them chose love over legacy. Not one of them would have walked into this chamber carrying the child of another species and dared us to challenge them. She looked at Virellia and nodded. That's not weakness, that's leadership. Others slowly stood beside her. Younger nobles followed, military captains bowed. People across the empire, watching from giant holoscreens, began to kneel in their homes. Drax stood frozen, his world crumbling. You're all fools, he barked. This child will divide. No, Virellia said coldly. This child will unite what you tried to keep broken. Then she looked at him with the calm of a blade before the final strike. Your time is over, Drax. Leave this chamber, or be escorted as a traitor to progress. He glared at her one last time, then turned and stormed out. Robes whipping behind him like a dying flag, silence returned. But this time, it was the silence of peace. Later, on the royal balcony, Virellia stood before the people of Zarinthia and beyond. Her voice broadcast across the stars. I was born into a world where strength meant silence, she said. But today, I speak. Not just as your queen, but as a mother, as a mate, and as someone who finally knows who she is. She turned to Alex, who stood beside her as the sky began to shimmer with light. A new dawn, a new era behind them in the reflection of her chamber walls. The queen's energy core glowed, no longer just blue, and no longer just red. It pulsed in a new color, one that had never existed before, a third light, a child's light. And somewhere in the distant sky, the galaxy shifted. Because a queen had dared to touch a human, and instead of falling,